A quick message before you listen to this episode of the podcast. It's extremely long. It's nearly 2 hours in length. And I did think of splitting it into two, part A and part B, but I haven't done that. Instead, what I suggest you do is listen as far as Geneva. That'll take you about an hour. And then the second half will take you from Geneva to the end of the EuroVelo 17 in Andermatt. Enjoy the listen. Welcome to episode 58 of the Cycling Europe podcast. My name is Andrew Sykes and welcome to part 7 of my tour of Europe in the summer of 2022. Now, more about this podcast in a few moments, but just to keep you up to date, if you've listened to the previous podcast, episode 57, part 6 of my Grand Tour of Europe, you might be scratching your heads as to where I actually spent the last couple of nights, because I didn't really make it clear at the end of the podcast, I don't think. Just to clarify, when I arrived in Sète, I did take the option of the home camper, and I spent 2 nights camping at a place called Montagnac, which is about 30 kilometres north of Sète, and that was really convenient because it meant it was close to Pézenas, and I spent yesterday with my friends Basil and Liz, as you heard me meeting them at the end of the previous podcast. So, now, this morning I left the home camper place in Montagnac and I did something that actually I didn't intend doing, and I've come back down to Sète. The reason I've come back down is because it dawned on me that if I followed the route that I was probably going to follow to Montpellier, which is the plan for today, I would end up cycling on busy D roads. So instead of doing that, I've come all the way back into Sète, or the outskirts of Sète, to pick up the Via Rhôna, the EuroVelo 17, and that is what this podcast is going to be all about. Me cycling from here in Sète to Avignon, Lyon, and then east in the direction of Switzerland, Geneva, and for me finishing in Andermatt, which is the end of the EuroVelo 17. At that point I'll pick up the Rhône Cycle Route, which will hopefully get me back to Rotterdam. So that's the plan over the course of the next week, 10 days. Don't know how long it will take me. It is going to probably involve at least, well, I guarantee 1 train, probably 2, perhaps even 3. We'll see how it goes. I've still got 5 train journeys that I can use of my allocated 10, maximum 100 kilometres. I'm going to be using one of them today because in a few moments I'm going to be setting off in the direction of Montpellier, following the route of the Via Rhôna, EuroVelo 17. I'm going to catch a train from Montpellier up to Avignon, which is about 100 kilometres, and then can continue from there. Now, for those of you who've perhaps read the second book or followed the blog back in 2013, you'll realise that actually this is a part of the EuroVelo network that I cycled before, because when I cycled from southern Greece to southern Portugal back in 2013, I cycled along the EuroVelo 8, and I actually cycled from Avignon down to Sète. So my excuse, in inverted commas, for using the train today is, yes, it gets me a little bit further along the route, and I do need that in terms of having enough time to get back to Rotterdam, but also it's a section that I've previously cycled. However, the bit from Sète to Montpellier, I seem to remember, is really spectacular because it cycles on the piece of land that is at the edge of the lagoon south of Montpellier. So I'm not going to take a train from Sète, I'm going to take my train from Montpellier to Avignon instead, and then tonight find some accommodation just to the north, hopefully, of Avignon. Don't know where that's going to be yet. Find out when I get up there. I'll perhaps spend the time on the train examining what my options are going to be. Right, so without further ado, I've not found the official start point of the Via Rhôna in Sète. OpenStreetMap would suggest that it's just a roundabout, so I haven't found that roundabout, but I have found a sign that says Via Rhôna, EuroVelo 17, and I need to start cycling in the direction of Andermatt. My train is at 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's now 10:30. I reckon I should be able to do that, no problem. And I think the wind is going to help me. Fingers crossed.
Mesdames, Messieurs, notre train arrive en gare d'Avignon-Ville. Terminus du train. En train, tous responsables.
Negotiating the stairs rather than the lift to avoid the massive queue. It's down done. Just now need to do up. Escalator works fine with a bike. The lift was too small. Hope I don't get told off by an SNCF controller. I've arrived in a very busy Avignon, and I am sous le pont. I am sous le pont d'Avignon, under the bridge at Avignon. I'm the only person standing here. Perhaps they don't know that this is where it refers to. Anyway, I think I booked myself into a campsite about 20 kilometres north. I say I think because they've taken half my money and they haven't confirmed yet, but I think there's a good chance that they'll let me in. So, without further ado, I'm setting off from sous le pont d'Avignon in the direction of, well, I think Châteauneuf-du-Pape actually is the town. Could have a glass of wine there. The camp in Art de Vivre, interesting name, close to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is where I spent last night. Must be, and this is very, very welcome, the quietest campsite I've stayed on this trip, and it really does improve the quality of the amount of sleep that you get. Can't say I'm anywhere near having a continuous night in the tent sleeping, but it makes a big difference when it's really quiet. It's now 7:45 in the morning. I'm packed up and ready to go, just having my morning coffee. Left Avignon yesterday. It was a bit of a left-right journey, following the signs of the Via Rhôna, but it was all very well signposted, and I'd booked into this place earlier in the day, so that was a weight off my mind. And eventually, it seemed to take a long time. It was only 15-20 kilometres after Avignon that I cycled. Did manage to escape the tentacles of the urban area of Avignon. A great campsite, actually quite quiet, to say it's the middle of August, but it's beautiful wooded campsite. It's in the forêt communale of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. That's what the sign says outside. And yeah, the final 10-15 minutes of yesterday's ride, as I kind of came to the top of a short hill, and then before me was the valley of Châteauneuf-du-Pape on one side, vineyards all around, little settlements dotted here and there, and then in the distance you could see Mont Ventoux, very distinctive shape, and the television mast at the top of Mont Ventoux, which I'd seen earlier in the day, but to actually have them all together was quite a spectacular way to end yesterday. And I hope that that kind of scenery is something that is going to become familiar over the next few days as I continue to make my way north in the direction of more hillier country, more mountainous country, towards the Alps. And today, well, I've looked on the map, I reckon Montélimar, which is about 70-80 kilometres along the route, and that is where I should hopefully be tonight. There's a campsite there. I've emailed them, nothing back from them yet, but if it's anything like this campsite, I don't think you should have any problem whatsoever in accommodating somebody on a bike by themselves with a little tent.
Les emplacements là, les mobilhomes, c'est complet. Mais avec la chaleur, les gens ils prennent que des mobilhomes climatisés. Ils ont peur, ils ont dit on va pas se mettre sous la tente. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire?
Peut-être en septembre, en
oui,
octobre, vous aurez plus de personnes.
On sera fermé en octobre. Hein.
Ah ouais, ok.
C'est lourd. On avait misé là-dessus. Les petites cabanes en bois que j'ai là-bas, je les ai achetées pour les cyclistes. Mais j'ai eu un problème avec le maire. Quoi, il y a eu un problème. La Via Rhôna, ils l'ont fait dévier là-bas. Avant, elle passait devant le camping.
J'ai remarqué ça hier, et oui, parce que j'arrive du sud d'Avignon, et il y a un pont, pas le pont du chemin de fer qui est fermé, mais avant ça, il y a un pont, un vieux pont, et c'est indiqué tourner à gauche. Et moi, j'ai vu que je venais ici, alors j'ai continué tout droit. Et puis après 1 kilomètre, 2 kilomètres, j'ai vu encore des panneaux pour le Via Rhôna.
Mais c'est moi. Ah oui, mais c'était la Via Rhôna provisoire. Avant qu'ils fassent là-bas, la provisoire entre guillemets, c'était là sur les routes, c'était superbe. C'était beau. Vous allez passer, vous allez voir, ça monte par Château-Montredon. Si vous passez là, c'était beau.
Et pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ont changé la route?
Politique. Ils avaient fait une demande là, et le maire à côté.
Interesting little chat there with the owner of the camping Art de Vivre near Châteauneuf-du-Pape. I asked him why there appeared to be 2 routes for the Via Rhôna, because yesterday, as I was approaching the campsite, the signs, they said turn left over a bridge, and that corresponded to what was on the OpenStreetMap and I needed to continue straight on. Fair enough. That's what happens frequently. You have to deviate away from the route to find somewhere to stay. But then a few kilometres later on, the signs started again, and I thought, well, hang on, this is nowhere near where the route should be. And apparently this is the original route, and the route was moved. Now, according to him, it's all to do with politics, and the mayor of a neighbouring community, who is president of the Conseil Général, so at a departmental level he's in charge, and he wanted his share of the money that was available from the European Union. Who knows, eh? The murky politics of the EuroVelo network of the Via Rhôna. Anyway, as I'm trundling, oh wow. Now, the view I've got is just beautiful. Again, predictably, it's a very beautiful day. Very, very quiet. It's only just past 8 o'clock. Vineyards to my right, vineyards to my left. And in the distance, presumably what is Châteauneuf, of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Newcastle of the Pope. So presumably it was once connected to the popes who lived in Avignon, not too far away. Now, the route doesn't go through the centre of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, either the old one or the new one, but I'm going to go up there. Oh, it's a bit of a hill, but yeah, I'm going to go up there to find my croissant and my pain au raisin for my breakfast. I have to say, I'm just loving this morning's cycling. The cycling infrastructure north of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and it may have started just to the south of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, bearing in mind I had to deviate away from the route to find the campsite, is fabulous. I know it won't last. I can see on my map it's only marked just Morna, which is a few more kilometres to the north. But it is astounding. I don't think I've hit a hard curb all morning. It's brilliant. And it's just so nice to be in a different geographical environment. There's lots of heavy industry or infrastructure around the Rhône, certainly in this part. I'm just passing underneath a towering electricity pylon, for example, and there have been quarries, there's been a big solar farm, hydroelectric operations. This is not postcard perfect, but it is just a great place to be cycling. And just as was happening yesterday, the increasingly hilly, mountainous nature of the Rhône Valley is continuing. And on top of all that, there's loads of cyclists, lots and lots of touring cyclists. Now obviously I'm heading north, so I don't see the ones heading north, but I just see the ones heading south, and every couple of minutes there's somebody now approaching. There are people with panniers cycling down the Via Rhôna, and most of them say bonjour. Let's try it, this one. Bonjour. Nope, he just ignored me completely. Miserable bastard. But there we go. My cycle along the Via Rhôna continues to go very, very well. I've just listened back to the comments I made yesterday, and yeah, I stick by them. They were made quite early on yesterday. It's now Saturday morning, by the way, and the cycle path continued to be brilliant. Sometimes on road, but mostly off road, and even when it was on road, they were only very, very quiet farm tracks and the like. Very interesting geography, increasingly hilly, really interesting little villages that you could see from the route. Fantastic. The only slight disappointment yesterday was the destination, Montélimar, which was, well, it was okay. The campsite was very crummy, and I was quite glad, in fact delighted, to escape there at 7 o'clock this morning, before anybody else got up. But goodness me, that wash block certainly needed a clean. Now, this morning has been fantastic so far, and it's only about 8:30. Came out of the campsite, had to cross back over the Rhône to find the Via Rhôna. Spectacular sunrise over the Rhine itself. Sorry, not the Rhine. I'm getting ahead of myself. Spectacular sunrise over the Rhône. I'm sure I'll see lots of spectacular sunrises over the Rhine in a few weeks. And then this footbridge, which was just wow. Wasn't expecting that at all. It was an old footbridge, or an old bridge rather, that had been destroyed at various points, including being blown up by the resistance during the war. But in more modern times, well, after suffering a fire, they rebuilt it and they repurposed it as a walking and cycling bridge, albeit a cycling bridge that you're supposed to push your bike across. I have to say I didn't, but there was nobody there to see me. But a fantastic way to start the morning, and that led to the small town of Rochemaure, on the opposite side of the river, with half of its buildings clinging to the side of the cliff, and what looked like an old castle on the very, very top of the cliff. It had a boulangerie, so I had my breakfast, my pain au chocolat, and my croissant and my coffee, and so far everything is going to plan on Saturday. Now, my plan for today, after last night's crummy campsite, I did point this out on Twitter, and Rob Watkins, now Rob actually made a monologue for the podcast a while back. He's a well-travelled person in Europe, and he said there's a really nice campsite at a place further north. Bonjour, Bonjour. A place further north called L'Ermitage. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the municipal site. Checked with him. Yes, that's the one he means. So that's my destination for today. And when I was looking at the map, I've still got these 4 train journeys to do. I don't have to do them. But Sunday, that's tomorrow, the weather is going to break. And there's forecast to have storms. People have commented that the route south of Lyon isn't that brilliant. And obviously you're cycling through a major city. So I think tomorrow morning what I'm going to do, I'm going to use another of my train rides. You can get the TER from L'Ermitage up to Lyon, and I'll do that hopefully in the morning, first thing. Right, there's a hill coming up, so expect me to be out of breath. Here we go. I'm going to use that hopefully tomorrow morning to get me to Lyon. And if I time it in the middle of the morning, then that should avoid most of the heavy storms, and then continue cycling east out of Lyon in the afternoon to hopefully a campsite outside of Lyon somewhere. That's the plan. Right, I've rejoined the bank of the Rhône. The sun's a bit higher than it was before. But oh, such a spectacular sight. There's what looks like a hydroelectric place behind me. There's an enormous barge ploughing its way upstream, heading to, who knows, Valence, Lyon, perhaps even further. Don't know how far the boats can go. And in the background, the mountains. Again, as I thought would happen when I commented yesterday, the mountains, the Alps are just increasingly present, which is fantastic news. Oh, and one last thing. On my left, noticed this earlier, because they're so large, there are 3 cooling towers. And they're churning out their steam from the top of the cooling tower. But the good thing is that that steam is going straight vertically up into the sky, which means there's no wind. Brilliant. I've arrived in the town of Le Poussin, and I've identified that there's a bike shop on here. Now I do need my tyres inflating, because I think I managed to deflate them yesterday with a broken one by the side of the cycle path. So I'm just going to see if it works if I ask them if I can borrow their bicycle pump. Here we go. Bonjour. Est-ce qu'il serait possible d'emprunter votre pompe à vélo pour gonfler mes pneus? Je crois que j'ai dégonflé hier.
Grosse valve ou petite valve?
C'est une valve
Presta,
oui, c'est ça. Borrowing is one thing, actually getting them pumped up is another. Easier said than done. There's normally a little lever on top. There's no lever here. Might have to ask for his assistance outside. Et c'est très populaire, il y a énormément de personnes qui font ça.
Là, l'été, il y a énormément de monde. Comme vous, avec des bagages.
Ouais.
Ouais, beaucoup. Des hommes, des femmes. Beaucoup de femmes.
Ouais. Et même des familles, des petits.
Des familles aussi, ouais. Mais donc avec des charrettes. Avec des,
Very nice man there at that shop in Le Poussin, helping me out with the tyres. It's very often the case, if you stop at a bike shop and ask to borrow a pump, they will be more than happy to do so, and very often they'll do it for you, as he did. Now, I got talking to him about the Via Rhôna. He said it was very, very popular with not just men, but women as well. And I asked him about the route going north. He said it did degenerate a little bit in terms of the surface, which is understandable because that is what I'm experiencing now. It's not quite the silky smooth path that I was following earlier today and yesterday, but it's still pretty good by cycle route standards. And he mentioned the signage becomes a bit more sporadic. Yeah, I agree with him there. It's there are far few signs, but basically when you're following a river, you just need to kind of keep the river in sight, although saying that I can't actually see it at the moment. It only gets complicated when you get to a village or a town where you've got to negotiate a bridge and perhaps go under the bridge, etc. Now, I also mentioned that I was enjoying the fact that it was getting hillier and more mountainous, and he did point out that as I go a little bit further north, it was actually going to get flatter, and that makes sense because I'm currently experiencing a flatter landscape. Back in Le Poussin, he referred to the mountains being the mountains of the Ardèche Mountains. And if you look on a map of France and look at the Rhône flowing from north to south, bonjour, you'll notice that on the west bank you've got the département of the Ardèche, and on the east bank you've got the département of Drôme. And I've been crisscrossing between them all morning on spectacular bridges. If you wanted to make a podcast about bridges, then all you need to do is to come to this part of the Rhône, and you've got plenty of things to talk about. Beautiful bridges, old bridges, new bridges, footbridges, bridges for bicycles, bridges for cars, bridges that have been destroyed, like I mentioned earlier, and rebuilt. Fantastic and very spectacular. And I've been crisscrossing from Drôme to Ardèche really all morning, and I think actually I'm just about to go over another bridge. Yep. And so I'm currently in the Ardèche, and presumably by the time I get to the other side of the bridge I'll be back in Drôme. Now, in terms of my plans for a little bit later, tomorrow, well, tonight I did book that campsite at Tain-l'Hermitage, and I've also bought my ticket for the train to go up to Lyon tomorrow. The only thing that's changed is the weather forecast, which has now got a lot more wetter, a lot more thundery. So it's probably no bad thing that I'm spending at least tomorrow morning, or at least an hour of it, on a train. It's nearing the end of the cycling day. A few kilometres back, well, perhaps, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 kilometres back, noticed 2 aeroplanes in the sky, and they were flying very low. Quite large aeroplanes in red and yellow, and I thought, they look like the Canadair planes that they used to fight fires. And then I arrived at a very straight bit of the river. It had been canalised, and there were lots of people just standing around waiting for something to happen. And eventually I just paused at the end next to a bridge and asked a chap who had a bike, and his wife was with him, what they were waiting for. And it was indeed these Canadair planes that had been using this straight bit of water for refilling their tanks full of water and then heading off in the direction of the Ardèche. Apparently there's some fires in the Ardèche, which is obviously not very far away at all. Anyway, I got chatting to him and eventually cycled with him. They've just left me, Laurent and Martine they were called, and he was talking about how the Compagnie Nationale du Rhône, CNR, you see it quite often. They're the people who have the hydroelectric stations. I think they're the people responsible for managing the Rhône in various ways, and he said that to pay less tax they have financed a lot of the Via Rhôna improvements, of which I've just cycled on one little bit, which is brand new, over the top of what looked like a hydroelectric dam. He also got talking about the wines. Apparently some really good wines from around here. Obviously he wasn't biased, but quite expensive wines, including at Hermitage, which is where I'm staying tonight, obviously. And if I look to my left, I can see hills which are covered in vines. This is the area, of course, of Côte du Rhône, which is a very popular wine in France. But the extent to which the Rhône has actually been managed is increasingly obvious. Apart from the dams, the canalisation, the locks, apparently it is still navigable. There are big locks that you can navigate your ship up. That's what Laurent was telling me. Yeah. But anyway, I'll be glad to get to the campsite tonight. When I mentioned what campsite I was staying on, he did kind of, his reaction was a bit kind of to imply it wasn't the best campsite in the world, but surely it can't be as bad as last night's, surely.
Oui, comme et là, ici ou ici ou ici.
Alors 47, 48 ou 50. Ok, pas de problème.
Donc les sanitaires sont ici au fond, monsieur.
Oh là là, ok.
Si vous souhaitez utiliser la Wi-Fi, vous avez ici le code Wi-Fi.
Ok.
Et quoi d'autre? Là, vous avez une petite porte qui est derrière donc les conteneurs ici.
Ouais.
Et pour ouvrir la petite porte, vous devez taper un peu.
It's Sunday morning and it's the start of week 7 out of 9, so I've got 3 weeks left. 2/3 of my trip is over, and as you can hear right on cue, it is thundering and lightning and it is raining and it's glorious. After 6 weeks of blue sky, sunshine, high temperatures, it's so nice to have a cool morning, for everything to be getting soaked wet through. Brilliant. It's also good for France, because France, like most places in Europe at the moment, is suffering from massive problems because of a drought. Now, my plan is to catch the train at 9:40. That'll take me to Lyon. Now, I think this weather is going to last all day. I really am undecided as to whether I will cycle in the rain or just find an accommodation option somewhere in the centre of Lyon. See how I feel when I get to Lyon later. I'm so glad I decided to take that train yesterday. It was a horrible morning and the rain continued into the early mid-afternoon. The train itself was really busy with cyclists. Now, whether they were taking the train because, like me, they wanted to avoid the rain, probably a lot of them did, or whether they were just on planned visits, I'm not sure. But there was one carriage, the carriage where I was, right on the end of the train at the front, which was dedicated really to cyclists. Never seen that in a French train before. It was more of an old style train rather than the modern TER trains, but it was a TER train, so there's no problem getting the bike on there. But there was loads of space for bikes, so it turned out pretty well. Now, I had hoped when I got to Lyon to spend the afternoon doing a bit of shopping. My wardrobe is in dire need of a bit of refreshment, but unfortunately, when I got to Lyon, it was a Sunday afternoon. Most French cities nowadays, most French towns, bigger ones certainly, they have most of their shops open, I think. That wasn't the case with Lyon yesterday. It was like a ghost town. Even the slightly out of centre Westfield shopping centre next to Lyon Pardieu station, all the shops were shut. So I couldn't do any wardrobe refreshing at all. So I went back to the hotel in a grimy little corner of the centre of Lyon and did a little bit of planning instead. I didn't really venture out after that. I first came to Lyon. It was probably the first big French city I visited back in the 1980s, early 1980s, on a school exchange. And I've got really clear memories of going there. It was a beautiful day, and I went with the French family to the parc avec la tête d'or, the park with the golden head, and I think that refers to the gates, which are all gold. And I've been back a few times since, most recently about 10 years ago when I did a course there, and I've got really positive memories of being in Lyon. But I have to say, yesterday was a kind of, oh God, this is grim. And I think it's really a reflection of the weather. It's amazing how the weather can make you think of a place as, oh wow, this is amazing, or oh goodness me, what a grim place to be. I think I sometimes forget that. So I'm sure Lyon is still just as beautiful as it always was, but just not when it's chucking it down. Now, it's Monday. It's a bank holiday in France today. It's the Assumption of Mary. Perhaps she had problems assuming that the shops were going to be open as well. Who knows? I'm now heading east in the direction of Genève, and eventually, obviously, in the direction of the Alps. The Rhône gets a lot more twisty and turny from this point onwards, and that is obviously a reflection of the geography. So I'm expecting to have a few more climbs, perhaps today, but certainly by the end of the week. Now, I think I can get to Geneva by the end of this week, by Friday or Saturday, and that would be great, because that means that I can hopefully then be in Andermatt by the middle of the following week, which still gives me those 10 days in which to get back to Rotterdam for the 3rd of September. That's the plan. I'm now trundling through a very, very quiet park, and I'm actually just wondering, because I just passed a little junction there, whether I'm going completely the wrong way. But it is so nice and quiet. Even if I am going the wrong way, it's probably worth it. As a plane comes into land at Aéroport Lyon-Saint-Exupéry, which is just to the south of where I am now. Interesting bit on the map, it says there's a greenway, a marked greenway, Voie Verte, off-road, but underneath it says, on this particular section, opérationnel à partir de juillet 2022, so operational from July 2022. Now obviously now it's August 2022. I wonder when this map was printed, whether it was this year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, because I've just pushed the bike up a very, very steep track, Probably the steepest bit of cycling, well, I didn't do it because I pushed, but the steepest bit of track that I've had to contend with since leaving Rotterdam. Fortunately, it wasn't very long. The question is this part indeed operational, or is my map wrong? I'm going to head up this little lane to see what happens. I'm really confused there. I don't know what was going on. I'm coming towards the end of the section that took me away from the Rhône, south a bit and then east a bit, and now I'm heading back north again, back to the Rhône. None of it appeared to be off-road, voie verte. Nothing appeared to be new. I mean, the signs looked fairly new, but then again all the signs look fairly new. So what exactly is operational from July 22? I'm not sure. Remains a mystery. Now, yesterday, as we know, it chucked it down, and it's a really damp morning in the sense that there's a dampness in the air. It's not been raining at all, but it's very, very humid, and certainly there are lots of insects in the air, and that's probably a reflection of the humidity in the air. France needs days and days and days, if not weeks, of that kind of rain in order to put it back where it should be in terms of having water supplies for the crops and for the rivers. It's interesting reading some of the press recently. The Loire is practically dry in some places. Saw those Canadair planes a few days ago trying to drench and put out the fires in the Ardèche, then the fires south of Bordeaux earlier in the trip, which meant that the closure of the Vélodicée. But just on a more humble, mundane level, it often feels like it's the beginning of autumn rather than the middle of summer, with the parched trees and the leaves on the floor. The colour has gone from a lot of the plants, and they're more yellow than green or any kind of vibrant colour. The sunflowers, I think I might have mentioned this before, but the sunflowers in the fields, they're just kind of, it's almost like they've given up on summer. They think, oh, sod this, I just desperately need a drink. And they're drooping and barely following the progress of the sun. So it really is quite an interesting and potentially, well, goodness knows what the consequences would be if they didn't get rain in vast quantities soon. I did read one article which made me smile, but not in a good way, on the BBC website a couple of days ago, and that was about Extinction Rebellion in France. They'd put concrete in the holes of golf greens down in Toulon in the south of France, because apparently, although there's a hosepipe ban in France, if you own a golf club, then you can still water your greens, albeit with only 30% of the water that you would normally use. And they were making the point, well, why should golf clubs have the exception when crops are dying in the field, when rivers are drying up? That's just putting golf clubs above the reality of drought. And it did seem to make sense. Perhaps the mystery is solved. I've just arrived at a big sign. The French do like their massive signs to say that they're investing in the cycleways. I've seen them in numerous places across France, and this is a good one. It must be 2 meters by 1.5 meters. Big bold writing, and it says, Ici, le département investit pour votre cadre de vie. So the department is investing. Aménagement de la Vélo Route Via Rhôna, phase 1. So improvement of the Via Rhôna Cycle Route, March to June 2022. 1.1 million euros. And I can now see a brand new track, so presumably this is what actually the map refers to when it says operational from July 2022. I found it, but just not quite as much as I imagined it to be in terms of length. But hey, every little helps. Mentioned it was a bank holiday, jour férié, here in France today, the 15th of August, the Assumption of Mary. And you've got to take your hat off to the French in terms of them basically respecting still their bank holidays and, well, their Sundays in Lyon. Aware of the fact that it was a bank holiday today, I did opt for the breakfast at the cheap hotel, and I kind of, filled my pockets, metaphorically. Didn't walk out with stuff in my pockets because I haven't got any pockets, but I did fill my stomach with lots of stuff because I anticipated finding it difficult to buy anything en route. And I've just crossed a couple heading in the opposite direction, and he said to me, had I seen an épicerie, a small food shop? I said no, I hadn't seen anything since Lyon. Even in Lyon, I don't think anything was open when I left. And I did ask him the same question about the direction I'm going in, and he said no. So I might have to survive on my cacahuète, my box of peanuts, certainly this afternoon, until I can cook my delicious spaghetti and pesto this evening on the campsite. The campsite that I hope is in or just south of a place called Saut-Brenaz. I've identified one there, and hopefully that will accommodate me tonight. Bonjour. C'est possible de rester ici ce soir, une personne avec une tente?
Saint-Rambert, oui.
Bonjour.
Oui, alors. Vous êtes tout seul?
Oui, moi et mon vélo.
Ah ouais, eh ben.
Il n'est pas tout seul alors.
Voilà, il a son meilleur ami.
Oui,
Je vous laisse mettre ces informations ici, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, absolument.
Here.
Yeah, where the calf was.
So just to the north of Sète.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right,
just
okay,
like
perfect.
that. But then we're talking about 3-4 minutes.
It's not.
right?
It's a small one, but it's what it is.
I mean,
And- And have you done much camping and cycling within Switzerland?
yes,
Yes.
And do you find the campsites more expensive?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Switzerland is overall more expensive. You notice that.
Switzerland
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
expensive, but we actually just said yesterday. I mean, going by bike is one way to discover it in a good price range.
Yeah.
Because the camping sites are probably 30-40 Swiss francs, which is now 30-40 euros, because
Even
that's-
for a cyclist.
Yes.
And the thing is,
You
now the
have this-
exchange rate is not good with euro.
No.
Mm.
You have to stop and go, so do ask that. Sometimes they give you an extra discount or price when you leave before 9 in the morning.
Okay.
I mean, if you go and do, this you will know, eating at a restaurant in Switzerland is just very expensive.
Yeah.
But if you go and cook, you'll be fine.
Spaghetti and
Yeah.
pesto.
That's the cheapest. And you're gonna go around the lake too, or?
Well, somebody has recommended that it's better to go on the north side of Lac Le Mans.
Depends what you wanna see, but.
But I've driven this in the
Ah,
past.
so you know that.
Oh, but
So-
the thing is, we did this last year, 2 years ago. These tracks are now a bit newly established. They've invested quite a bit of money.
That's on the south of Lac.
Yes.
Yeah, on the French side. It's
On the
basically
French-
the same labeling as this
Yeah.
one here. I mean, it's it's still the Via Rhôna up to the border here,
Mm-hmm.
to Saint-Jean-Golf.
Okay.
So I would make your decision. Do you want to see like towns, villages, be a bit in an area with a lot of infrastructure? Then the Swiss side is the better one. Lausanne is a very nice and interesting city with a lot of culture. If you want to more go out in the green, then the French side is definitely the French is cheaper.
Yeah.
But being Swiss, we don't
Yeah.
want to stop you from going to.
Yeah, I think I'll
Switzerland.
stick to France
And then you'll do
Um,
the Rhine, right? So where will you connect?
in Andermatt.
Wow, you're going to do exactly what we did.
So you're gonna continue then the Rhône before
Yeah.
upstream of the
You're
lake?
going to
or-
go valleys, yeah.
Yeah, you
You're
go
going to go do a bit of altitude.
via the Furka Pass,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
and
exactly
then
what we
to
did.
and then to Andermatt,
Yeah.
and then that's where the Rhine starts.
That's it.
A bit,
I'll
a bit further still. I
when-
mean,
Yeah, probably we'll miss because we live by the Rhine.
Yeah.
But we'll
Oh.
probably miss you.
Mm.
We'll probably still be on holidays. I'll write
but
it down.
you're
my
gonna
address.
climb with the bike, the pass by the bike, or you're gonna take the train?
No, I'll take the Furka Pass.
Wow, that's
Because in
gonna be-
Andermatt there's a second one. If you can,
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
Yeah, I think you've got to climb
Oberalp.
after Andermatt, you've got to climb
You
again.
have two paths basically.
Yeah.
Because you have
Well,
to
you're
first leave
prepared,
the
but
road.
it's a really tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, going up a pass like this, you're going to be in high altitude. But
Some interesting comments there from those Swiss cyclists. They were cycling in the opposite direction to me. Bonjour. And it started in Geneva, although they come from the other side of Switzerland, from the east side of Switzerland, near the Rhine in fact. And they were, well, the good news is that the cycling between here and Geneva, okay, fine. Thereafter it becomes, obviously, I know this anyway, more challenging. But the prices, 30, 40 euros for a campsite, even with a bike. I might have to exploit warm showers and perhaps the home camper thing, if that works in Switzerland. I'll have a look later today. Well, today is Tuesday, which is fantastic because it's not Monday and it's not a bank holiday. Yesterday, really, very, very little open. I passed two exasperated cyclists coming in the other direction who asked me if there was an épicerie that I passed in the 40-50 kilometres since Lyon. I said I hadn't, and they'd had the same issue coming in the other direction. I eventually found a Lidl that was open not far from where I eventually did stay last night, which is at Sobrenaz. Great campsite, very busy with groups. It's on an island in the middle of the Rhône, and they've managed to, I presume, build, it doesn't look natural, a channel from one side to the other with this raging torrent of water, which makes a brilliant place to do canoeing and kayaking. And that's what most people there were doing, but there was a handful of cyclists as well, including those two Swiss people that I've just spoken to. So, following on from their recommendation, I'm now heading for Seyssel, Seyyssel, which is perhaps a little bit further than I anticipated, but if there's a good campsite there, more than happy to keep going, and if it's flat, then it shouldn't be a problem getting there, even if it's 100 kilometres from where I set off. And so far, well, I've nearly done 20, and it's barely 9:30, so that shouldn't be an issue at all.
Sète et 2 orangina 6. Alors 13 € s'il vous plaît.
Ok, je peux payer avec la carte?
J'ai pas de carte. Avec le téléphone? Je prends pas la carte.
Ok, bon, ok. That was me attempting to pay for my lunch in a little snack bar cum restaurant next to a lake about, well, an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. The woman running the place didn't accept cards and you couldn't pay by telephone, so I wasn't the only one who didn't have any cash on them, so we all had to make sure that we transferred the money through an IBAN number that she provided. It's all very strange. For goodness sake, woman, just get yourself a card machine, a card reader. They can't be that expensive nowadays. It was a curious place. When I walked in, stumbled upon the place. There seemed to be quite a few cyclists in there. Went in there, a few people were eating, and I said to the woman, "What have you got to eat?" And she looked at her colleague as if I'd asked, how do you get to the moon? She looked in horror and then turned to the chef, and the chef said he could do me some meat and cheese on a platter, which was delicious, and it was perfect for lunch. But don't bars, snack bars, restaurants, isn't it normal that they sell food? And nowadays, isn't it normal that they take card payment? Anyway, perhaps that's the way of things here in Savoie. Bonjour. A couple of touring cyclists, so I know I'm on the route. I do have a problem when I'm recording these things. I tend not to look at the signs, and on numerous occasions, even trying to record this bit, I've gone wrong and think, oh my God, where the hell am I? Anyway, the fact that they've just passed me is a sign that I'm still on the Via Rhôna. Now, today has been one of the best days of cycling so far, if not the best days. And I'm not talking just about the Via Rhôna here, I'm talking about the entire trip since leaving Rotterdam. It's been increasingly spectacular the further I've cycled along the valley of the Rhône. Haven't climbed very much at all. I'm still only at 250 metres. I think I live higher than 250 metres in West Yorkshire. But what has happened is that the mountains on either side, as I get closer and closer to the Alps, to the centre of the Alps, the mountains have obviously shot up. And to my left is Le Grand Colombier, which is one of the climbs of the Tour de France, sticking up, great hulk of a thing. The other thing that has been quite nice today is my energy levels. Yesterday, come 2 o'clock in the afternoon, after I'd cycled 80 kilometres, I was just ready to flop, and quite happy to stop at the campsite when I arrived there quite early. That was after having had a day off in Lyon the previous day. There's a sign, so I'm turning right. I'm still paying attention there. Whereas today, I've cycled well over 100 kilometres now. I've still got about another 10-15 kilometres to go until my destination at Sète. And I feel as bright as I did when I got out of the tent this morning. How does that work? Perhaps it's the great big pile of pasta that I ate last night at the campsite, combined of course with what I ate at that little snack bar, the local meats and local cheeses. That's the secret. Forget your high energy protein shakes. The secret is pasta and meat and cheese.
I'm Stefan and I live in Haute-Savoie, about 80 kilometers far away from here.
Okay. Now, you overtook me earlier when we were on the Via Rhôna, and I had to double take. I had to look twice at the vehicle that you're cycling. Mm-hmm. Could you explain the bicycle, the tricycle? I don't know how you describe it. Could you explain the vehicle that you are actually using for cycle touring?
Well, this is a Velomobile. It has 3 wheels, 2 in the front and 1 on the back, and it's completely closed. Mm-hmm. And it can go up to 80 kilometers. Some drivers goes faster than this. They can reach 100. So it's possible to go very fast with this.
So it's similar to a recumbent bike, but it's covered by an outer shell that presumably gives it an aerodynamic aspect.
Yes, it is very aerodynamic.
Aerodynamic.
A difficult word. And it helps a lot When I reach 30, it goes very faster than a normal bike. With a normal bike, when you reach 30, you really have to make efforts to go faster. Okay. With this, not too difficult.
And how much does it weigh?
Without any luggage in it, it's 25 kilos. And with my luggage, I got quite a lot. I maybe have 15 kilos more. So.
And your T-shirt says Association Française de Vélo Couché. So presumably there's more than just yourself who have a vehicle like this.
Yes, we are quite many practitioners, but most of them are in the part of France where it's flat, because it's quite difficult to climb with this kind of vehicle.
So what's the maximum gradient that you would attempt with this vehicle?
10, 12. Over this, I never tried.
So that's quite 10% is quite steep.
It's steep, yeah. Definitely steep.
And did you make it, or did you buy it like this?
I bought it. It was a second-hand one. I bought it from a rider who lived in south of France, and he needed some money, so he sold it. It was depressing selling it, but it was a good value for me.
And presumably you've taken it all over France. Have you taken it elsewhere around Europe?
With this? No. I mostly use it to go to work. Oh, right. I rarely use it for a trip, because it's really hot inside and you don't have much space to put the luggage, so it's not very practical.
And do you have a normal bike, a normal touring bike, and do you go cycle touring on a normal bike?
What is a normal bike? I used to ride what you call normal bike. I call this in French vélo droit, straight bike. But I stopped. It is too painful. I don't ride this anymore. So now when I travel, I use a bent bike.
A bent bike?
Right.
Can you explain what a bent bike is?
A recumbent.
A recumbent.
Recumbent. I use a recumbent.
That was Stefan. Talked to him last night, and interesting chap, interesting vehicle. If you'd like to see a picture of that particular vehicle, because I'm not sure you would be able to necessarily visualise what he was talking about if you didn't see a picture, you can find one in the gallery on day 45 on cyclingeurope.org. Now, today is Thursday. No, it's not. It's Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. And it's Wednesday lunchtime actually, and I've bumped into him a couple of times this morning before he headed further into Haute-Savoie to where he lives. Now, yesterday, cycling through Savoie, now in Haute-Savoie. There's a reason why it's called Haute-Savoie, because it's a lot higher than Savoie. And, whoa, yesterday, didn't really have to work very hard for the beautiful views and the scenery that I got, but today, that has certainly been the case. Stayed overnight in Sète, and that was at 260 metres. After this morning's climbing, actually went up to 560 metres, so there was a good 300 metres of climbing. And I don't mind that at all. In fact, I quite enjoy the climbing. What I don't like is the little climbs, and I think I'm going to get a few of those in the next few hours. More about that in a second. But really, really good morning. The weather's been okay, a bit cloudy, but actually that's quite good when you're climbing big hills. Now, I've stopped in a little wooded area, and the reason I've stopped here is because in a few hundred metres I'm going to be leaving France for the first time since the 6th of July. Just look back at my little notebook. It was day 4 when I actually cycled from near Ostend, that was the co-housing project, the warm showers place, into France as far as Dunkirk, and I stayed overnight at the campsite near Dunkirk. That was when I entered France. It's now day 46, so after 42 days I'm actually leaving, but only very briefly, because the route goes into Geneva, into Switzerland, and then a few kilometres later it actually comes out of Switzerland again and follows the southern route of the shore of Lac Léman, or Lake Geneva as we call it in English. You can follow, there is a Swiss route which goes on the northern side, but I'm going to go back into France because probably it will be cheaper in terms of the campsites. I think I've already mentioned that, and also I think it's just a more interesting route. I've never actually been on that side of Lac Léman before, whereas I have driven on the top half. So that's the plan. So within the next 3, 4, 5 minutes I should be in Switzerland. I do hope the line on my map is the correct one, because I can't see anything yet. I'm going through the wooded area on a nicely tarmac track, very pretty, and can't see any sign that says au revoir from France, but I'm here. I'm going to stop the bike. This is the border between France and Switzerland. My bike is sitting on the border, and there is actually a Swiss sign, the Rhône Cycle Route, Via Rhôna. Yeah, that's definitely a Swiss sign, and there's a kind of a mark. It looks like a trig point actually. There's an S on one side. Perhaps it's north, south, east, west, although if it was, it's pointed in the wrong direction. So for the next few hours at least, I'm going to be in Switzerland. I use Cyclemeter to record the GPS track. I find it really useful when it comes to writing the books later, that you can pinpoint a particular place and it cross-references with Google Street View. Bonjour. And you can see exactly where you were at a particular time and look at the pictures, which can be quite useful. But it also tells you, or tries to tell you, how many calories you've burnt on a particular trip. And I did smile when I saw yesterday's. It said 4,500 or thereabouts calories on what was a fairly flat ride, but it was just quite a long ride. And I thought, nah, that's nonsense. I don't know how they work it out, but I don't think I earned my 4,500 calories yesterday. Gives you a good excuse for eating in the evening, but apart from that. However, today, with all the climbing, I'm certainly going to have earned however many thousand calories Cyclemeter tells me I've earned. Up and down, up and down, up and down, which is good practice for what's coming when I've got to climb up to Andermatt in a few days' time. Now, I'm on my way to Geneva. I can see it in the distance, the towers. Looks a bit hazy over there. I did think it was going to rain earlier, but it didn't. So let's hope it stays dry. Now, a few corrections. First of all, I commented that there was an S on that plinth, that bit of stonework when I reached the border and wondered whether it was south, but it wasn't pointing south. Well, the S presumably stood for Switzerland, or La Suisse, of course. That was the first error. I dare say if I'd looked on the other side, it probably said F for France. My pronunciation of Lac Léman seems to be a bit here and there as well. It is Lac Léman, definitely. I'd rather use their words for it rather than Lake Geneva. It is Lac Léman. And the third thing is, if anybody read the post yesterday I put on the website for day 45 regarding the Grand Colombier mountain, I referred to it initially as only being 560 metres, which did seem a bit ridiculous, and I made a comment about how small it was. Well, I'd read Wikipedia wrong. It was 1,560 metres. I've gone back and corrected it. So thank you to the person on Twitter who pointed that out. And I now have another small climb. I'm just going to change gear. Ah, that's better. Whew. The other thing that perhaps just needs correcting is my estimated time of arrival in Geneva. Well, not time, but day. I think right at the start of this podcast, I said that I would hopefully be in Geneva by the end of this week. Well, actually, in my mind, when I was saying that, it was because I was thinking that would be the end of the Via Rhôna. Well, it isn't. The Via Rhôna is, of course, at the top, at the other end of Lac Léman. And then I've got another few days to get myself from the end of Lac Léman all the way up to Andermatt by the Furka Pass. And things like that, like I said, are really good practice. Whew.
Commence à 18h aujourd'hui, ne manquez pas.
Right, now that the chap advertising, I think he must be a clown or something, courtesy of his tonneau and his van, has gone, it's been an interesting 24 hours. I'm now in a place called Thonon-les-Bains, which is on the shore of Lac Léman in France. Yesterday, cycled into the centre of Geneva. A bit of a twisty-turny route, but I kept to it and eventually made my way into the centre. Paused only very, very briefly. It's clearly a very affluent place, quite a nice place, but not somewhere where I particularly wanted to hang around very long. So I was soon back on the bike and continuing my cycle along the shore of the lake, heading back in the direction of France. Now, one of the reasons for wanting to get back to France was that I wanted to have a better chance of getting a campsite that wouldn't cost me a fortune. I'm aware, of course, that campsites in Switzerland are not cheap. Over the border into France, I identified a campsite that was about 7 or 8 kilometres away, and I followed the directions on Google. It was a bit away from the shore. Got there, and unfortunately, when I got there, it said complet, and there was nobody around. The reception was closed. Now, looking back, I wish I'd perhaps persisted and found somebody, because I'm sure they could have squeezed me in. There seemed to be plenty of patches of grass here and there, which I could have used, but anyway, I didn't. There were 3 more campsites, another 6 kilometres away, clustered together, They were nearer the shore, so I headed in that direction, and about half an hour later I got there. Went to the first campsite, which I thought was the most likely and cheapest. It was a 2-star place, but they didn't accept tents. Now, hey, I've said this before and I'll say it again, you ain't a campsite if you don't accept tents. So the campsite that was claiming to be a campsite, they suggested I go to the place opposite. The woman was very nice actually, and she said be quick because it's going to be raining pretty soon, and it was just beginning to start raining. So I went across the road to the 4-star place, and by this time it was raining quite hard. Any port in a storm. They found me an emplacement, a pitch, and I paid up my, brace yourself, €35, by far the most expensive campsite I think I've ever paid for. Pause for thought. Yeah, that place up in Normandy, what was it? I've forgotten the name. Roche something, four something, I've forgotten. €4. Municipal site was brilliant. €35 on Lac Léman. Anyway, moving on. Got my pitch, went to pitch the tent, but by this time it was throwing it down and it was thunder, lightning. But I knew that if I got the tent up it would at least dry. What I didn't anticipate was that it acted a bit like a swimming pool and just gathered lots and lots of water while I was putting the tent up. By the time I'd got the tent up, one end of the tent was about 2 or 3 centimetres deep in water. So I took the bike under the awning of the wash block and sorted my other stuff out, and then went back to the tent and started to, with my towel, just try and get as much water out of the tent as possible. Eventually I did, and that combined with some paper towels, the entire stock of paper towels I think of the wash block, but hey, I did pay €35 for it, managed to more or less dry the tent. Now although it was still raining, I knew that once the water was out of the tent it would dry pretty quickly. That's what they tend to do, and that's how they're designed, and it did. Within about half an hour the inside was dry enough to get in, so I moved everything across from the wash block as quickly as I could, got inside, got in my sleeping bag. End of day. I was just glad to have somewhere to sleep. Now, it rained much of the night, but by this morning it had dried up, so I escaped pretty quickly. I think I was out of the campsite by 7:30, 8 o'clock. My tent is not exactly sopping wet, it's okay. And actually, here in Thonon-les-Bains, the weather's not too bad. Did have a few worries about my phone. It was refusing to charge. That would be a bit of a disaster, especially if I couldn't recharge it and it went down to 0, because basically that's my whole communication and research for campsites and what have you, route planning, out of the window. But anyway, when I got to Thonon-les-Bains, I asked the tourist office if I could plug it in to their plug, and they kindly said yes, and fortunately it worked. It did start charging. So whether it's an issue with the battery I'm not sure, but at least I can charge it from mains electricity. Now I did, while I was there, just ask what the weather forecast was going to be like. She said it was going to be dry until 4 o'clock this afternoon, when it's going to start raining again. So my mission now, it's just past 11 o'clock in the morning. I've got 4 or 5 hours in which to find somewhere to stay tonight, either a campsite. Quite frankly, if I pass a decent campsite this side of the border before I get back into Switzerland, I'll probably stay there. I've contacted a couple of warm showers people over in Switzerland on the route of the EuroVelo 17, it was about 60 kilometres from where I was earlier, so probably about 50 kilometres from where I am now. Nothing come back yet from those. I might try some more if nothing comes of it. I can't find any campsites on the EuroVelo 17. Remember, this is when the Via Rhôna finishes at the end of France, and then it just continues being the EuroVelo 17 all the way to Andermatt. So quite a bit of uncertainty still about today, but I'm determined to make sure I don't get caught out again by the weather. I've learnt my lesson. Famous last words. now within a couple of kilometres, if that, of the Swiss border again, but this time I'm staying in Switzerland for quite a few days. And this is the last bit of cycling I'm going to be doing in France. 44 days I reckon I've done in France. Been interesting, varied. I think the highlight has to be probably the Via Rhôna, the bit which I'm doing now, despite last night's weather. Now there is a chance that I could return to France. In fact, I think it's more than a chance, I think it's almost definite that I will return to France when I'm cycling down the Rhine. But my plan, because I cycled a bit of the Rhine route back in 2010, and I did stay on the French side then, my plan this time is to stay as much as possible on the German side. But that's not to say I won't pop across from time to time. For example, after Basel, I know there's a good campsite just on the French side as you head north. But it's nearly au revoir France. Now the Via Rhôna is finishing, but this podcast isn't, because I haven't got to the end of the EuroVelo 17 yet. And that will happen when I get to Andermatt. So quite a few days, well, I reckon at least 3, if not 4 days of cycling still to do. And in the nearer future, tonight's accommodation is sorted, thank God. I found a campsite in a place called Aigle in Switzerland. Give them a ring, booked myself in, and check the prices. They don't seem to be extortionate, so let's hope that that's a sign of things to come. Well, I've arrived at the end of the Via Rhôna at Saint-Gingolph in France, literally within a few steps of Switzerland, and I have to say it's a far nicer spot than that roundabout in Sète that appeared to be the start of the Via Rhôna. Well, the start for me, the end for some people heading south. My recommendation would be to do it in the direction I've done it in, head into the mountains. I think it gets better the further north and the further east you get, but whatever your choice. Now there is a sign next to the little shelter where I've parked the bike, and it says 17, that refers to EuroVelo 17, Glacier du Rhône, 240 kilometres. So that's what I've now got to do in the next 3 or 4 days in order to get myself nearly to Andermatt. It's now Friday evening. I arrived at the Camping de la Piscine in Aigle yesterday evening, and the heavens opened and it rained all night long, and it was still raining this morning, and it was still raining early this afternoon, so I didn't do anything apart from just stay put, do a bit of planning. And I've thought about the next 3-4 days. I've sorted myself out with some warm showers accommodation for tomorrow, which is Saturday. And Sunday I booked myself into a campsite a bit further along in the direction of Andermatt, and then hopefully on Monday night I should actually be in Andermatt. And although I did call the campsite in Andermatt, it is the place I stayed at back in 2010 when I came north to south, and it's basically a field, so I can't imagine it ever sells out or is full, so I don't think there'll be any problem whatsoever in me getting in there. Now, apart from just having the opportunity to do a bit of admin, to wash my clothes, to sort out a few bits and pieces, my day off, my forced day off in Aigle did have a little surprise. I headed into the town earlier this afternoon, once the rain had more or less stopped, to get some money from a cash point. and I noticed there was a tourist office, so I popped into the tourist office, as I normally do, and asked for some maps. And then towards the end of the conversation, I just mentioned the fact that the Tour de France appeared to have passed through Aigle quite recently, because there was lots of bunting and things in the street like road markings which referred to it. And this was the response of the woman who was in the tourist office.
Oui, cet été, le 9 juin.
Ok,
9
non, je savais pas.
Pardon, oui, juillet.
Parce que je vois tous les...
Oui, il y a eu le départ de la 9e étape,
oui.
Ici à Aigle. Et si par hasard vous passez, on a le Centre mondial du cyclisme à Aigle.
Ah ouais.
Voilà.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
C'est le Centre mondial en fait du cyclisme et...
C'est le siège du UCI,
voilà.
Ah, je ne savais pas du tout.
Oui. Donc vous avez ici, il y a des stagiaires qui viennent du monde entier pour s'entraîner dans ce centre, étant donné qu'ils ont à côté un terrain de pump track, un terrain de BMX. À l'Aisin et au Diableret, il y a beaucoup de pistes de vélo de descente. Les stagiaires s'entraînent aussi beaucoup le long du Rhône. Donc vous pouvez le visiter gratuitement. Vous pouvez aller visiter le vélodrome à l'intérieur.
Ouais.
Et actuellement, il y a une exposition du Tour de France jusqu'à septembre. Et vous pouvez visiter gratuitement.
Well, this is a little bit of a surprise, to say the least. Who knew that the UCI, the headquarters of the UCI, the Centre Mondial du Cyclisme, was in Aigle? I'm stuck in Aigle because of the rain chucking it down, and here I am standing outside the headquarters of the UCI. Now, I've just spoken to the woman on reception. I think it must be organisation policy, basically, for nobody to speak to anybody who turns up and asks to speak to them. But there is an exhibition here all about the Tour de France, a few old bikes, and perhaps the most impressive thing here, apart from the Swiss reception and the exhibition, is the fact that if you wander just to the other side of the exhibition, I'm hoping, by the way, I get told off by somebody for using the microphone in here, and then they'll have to speak to me, but anyway. If you come a little bit further, you find a velodrome, a full-scale functioning velodrome, and round the edge is an exhibition of pictures. How strange that I should end up in Aigle because of the rain and find myself standing in the heart of world cycling. About 25 kilometres into my cycle on Saturday morning, heading in the direction of Sète, where I'm going to be staying with a warm showers person. The warm showers person, when they replied, they said that they would be celebrating the 87th birthday of his father with a raclette party, which should be quite interesting. You might hear that later, I suppose. I have to say, I'm taking this very, very slowly. I'm in no rush whatsoever. I've done about a third of the distance so far, and it's still late morning, plenty of time. The scenery increasingly stunning. It was stunning to begin with. It just kind of notches up every metre you go in the direction of the really high mountains. Now, the reason why I was recording this now, you probably can hear the main road in the distance, but it now is in the distance. Up until now, it's been kind of right next to the cycle path, and that's one of the problems. It's inevitable, but it's a problem with cycling in the valleys in Switzerland, is that everything is crammed in together. So you get everything within quite a narrow band of land. So it's quite difficult to escape the industry, the roads. The trains are quite nice because they're quite pretty when they come past. but could do without the roar of the cars. And at least on this little section they are a little bit further away. The weather's okay, nothing too great. It's raining at the moment, but it's nothing too heavy. Got the Rhône on my left, mountains ahead of me, and in the next few kilometres I might actually deviate. The route doesn't look as though it goes through Martigny, but I might deviate slightly just to take in Martigny, see what it's like. That's the town at the corner. At the moment I'm heading basically more or less south, and then after Martigny I need to start heading east, which is what I'll be doing all the way to Andermatt. And actually the rain's getting a bit heavier, so I'm going to stop recording and cover up my phone. Now about 50 kilometres into the cycling day. Had a little detour to Martigny, nice little place, quite smart. A nice modern building which was the local secondary school. A black block of steel and glass, black steel, fantastic. Now I'm heading down the valley towards Sion and eventually to Sète, and I'll just describe the valley. Obviously on either side we've got high mountains, but starting from the right, yes, it's a high mountain, but I can see a substantial town just clinging to the edge of the cliff. Goodness knows how you get up there. Is there a cable car? Is there a road? Presumably one of the two, perhaps both of them. And then in the valley on that side, on my right to the south, you've got the road and the railway and quite a few towns and villages. Then you've got the river just immediately to my right. Then you've got the bank and the cycle track on the bank. And then to my left, well, predominantly you've got a lot of fruit farms, apple trees, that kind of thing. And then you've got more houses in little towns and villages. And then sweeping up the slopes to my left are dozens, hundreds probably, of vineyards. And some of them are in extremely inaccessible areas. Okay, there's a town to my right and you're going to get there either by a road or by a cable car. But some of the vineyards on my left, I'm just staring at them thinking, well, how the heck do you actually get up there? And how do you get the vines, or rather the grapes that you pick, back down into the valley? It's extraordinary.
Joyeux anniversaire, joyeux anniversaire, André, joyeux anniversaire. Un, deux, joyeux anniversaire, joyeux anniversaire, joyeux anniversaire, joyeux
That's the sound of the train that I suppose I could have taken, but I haven't. And what you heard a few moments ago was us singing happy birthday to my Warm Showers host's father, Andre, who was celebrating his 87th birthday. My Warm Showers host, Jean Daniel, and his family were excellent hosts. Really nice, pleasant evening. We had raclette and lots of local wine, and crucially, Jean Daniel also gave me quite a bit of useful information about the route that I'm going to be taking over the next 2 or 3 days to Andermatt and beyond, including some information regarding a section of the route number 1, which I'm following, which is better off missed, but more about that no doubt later. Now, each of the next 3 days is going to involve probably around 1,000 metres of climbing. Hasn't really started yet. In fact, today I think I've done more downhill than uphill. and now I'm just trundling on the flat next to the Rhône itself, but at some point it will kick in, and then the same tomorrow to the Furka Pass and then down into Andermatt, so a bit of downhill tomorrow, and then the day after when I start the Rhône Cycle Route, climbing up again to another pass before heading off down the Rhine. Now the thing that has changed this morning, shortly after leaving Sète, where I stayed last night, is that I'm now in German speaking Switzerland, so I'm outside my linguistic comfort zone, which should be interesting. Also got a few issues with the electrical equipment in terms of charging. My plugs didn't fit in Jean Daniel's plugs at his house. I'm hoping that was to do with his plugs rather than anything more chronic, because I was able to use the plugs at the campsite in Aigle, which is in Switzerland obviously, earlier in the week, no problem. Anyway, a minor issue. The big issue is making sure that I get over these climbs and get to Andermatt before the end of tomorrow. But today's destination is a place called Camping Brigge, which is not actually in Brig. That did cause some confusion last night. It's a bit further on and it will involve a bit of climbing. Now I've just passed through Brig. It's nearly 12:30, and it's at this section where the climbing is really going to start. In fact, back in Brig I passed a sign that pointed it out that you were going to have to climb a lot, and the recommendation was to take the train. Well, I'm not going to take the train on this occasion. I'm going to do the climbing. The valley has narrowed significantly. It's a lot quieter in terms of the number of people around. Still a fair number of cyclists. Now, the section that Jean Daniel had recommended that I avoid on the cycle track is the section between Morel and Nederwald. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be avoiding that. And then the campsite is about 30 kilometres from where I am at the moment, so that'll bring me to about 80 kilometres for the day. So in terms of the cycling distance, it's going to be a fairly ordinary day. In terms of the climbing and the change in altitude, it's going to be far from ordinary. So here goes. It's now just after 8 o'clock. I'm in the tent at the campsite, and a quick recap over how it went today, pretty much to plan, although with one slight change. Jean Daniel, as I've just mentioned, he suggested leaving the road, or rather leaving the cycle track at Morel and then staying on the road until Nederwald. Well, actually, I did that, but I actually only stayed on till Lax, because there looked as though there was a route that took me back to the cycle track after the bit which was problematic, and that worked fine, and it was a lot better. The main road was really busy and some of the cars were quite close. Wasn't a pleasant experience, but it could have been a lot worse. The weather was fine and there were no lorries or anything like that. It was just cars, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I was glad to come off of the main road and then follow the Route 1 from Lax to where I am now, which is at the campsite near a place called Ritzingle, that's right, yeah. Now, I'm at 1,315 metres here on the campsite. So thinking about tomorrow is the second big day of climbing in order to get me to the end of the EuroVelo 17 at Andermatt. I've got to go over the Furka Pass. Now the Furka Pass is at 2,429 metres, so that means I've got, well, just over 1,000 metres of climbing to do. Not sure whether that involves up and down at all, or whether it involves just straight up. We'll find out tomorrow, I suppose. So a little bit more challenging than today in terms of the elevation that I've got to cycle up, and it looks to me as though there is no choice tomorrow. After a place called EuroVelo, you've got to join the road. The Furka Pass and the cycle path are one and the same, so you can't opt out. I'm hoping, with it being a Monday morning, Monday lunchtime, Monday early afternoon, by the time I get there, it won't be that busy, hopefully. Now, the campsite where I'm actually sitting in my tent, probably only about 5 metres from the cycle track, because the cycle route 1, the EuroVelo 17, actually passes through the middle of the campsite, which is very convenient. So I should be off reasonably early tomorrow. The weather's still looking decent, so I'm looking forward to getting to Andermatt again. I was last there back in 2010. It'll be good to return and go to the same campsite, that field next to the ski lift, and that'll be the end of the EuroVelo 17, and the end, I'm sure you'll be delighted to find out, because it's been a long podcast, of this episode of the Cycling Europe podcast. But one more day to go, one more day of climbing, and we'll be there. I did warn you right at the very beginning that this was going to be a very long podcast. I think we're something like an hour and 45 minutes in, but we're nearly there, so congratulations if you've made it this far. I am about to set off on the last part of the EuroVelo 17, which is going to be the climb from the campsite up to Andermatt via the Furka Pass. Now, I'm standing next to the sign which says that a place called EuroVelo is 16 kilometres away. That's going to be my first destination, and for those first 16 kilometres there's going to be barely any climbing. It's just the cycle track that goes from the campsite all the way along the valley, and then when I get to EuroVelo, it's at that point when the cycle track joins the Furka Strasse, as it's called, which is the main road over the pass itself, and it's between there and the Furka Pass at 2,400 and something metres that the hard work is going to have to be put in. After the Furka Pass, obviously, it's downhill all the way to Hospental, and then again a cycle along the valley to my final destination and the end of the EuroVelo 17, which is going to be at Andermatt. Now, I'm slightly delayed this morning because I've been trying to make sure that everything is charged up, but I've now got a phone which is at 86%. My battery pack is fully charged, so I think I'm ready to go. I've got my water, I've had my breakfast. Yeah, I think that's it. The sun's shining, and it's going to be a challenging day, but it should also be a very, very memorable day. So here goes. Okay, I've just arrived in EuroVelo, which is where the cycle path meets the main road, the Furka Strasse, and something strange has just happened. Well, about 20-30 minutes ago, the wind really picked up. So I never really thought about the wind being an issue. Obviously the bad weather might have been an issue, but it's blue sky, just a few clouds. The altitude, the climbing, an issue, yes. My fitness, yes. My energy levels, yes, but I never really considered the wind. So let's hope that it dies down or isn't too much of an issue as I'm climbing. But I've just had a really nice conversation with a Belgian couple and their little daughter. Their little daughter was riding a little bike, and it had a belt drive, and we were talking about that, and she wanted to know where I slept and what the tent was and what have you. Really cute little kid. And he said to me that the slope on the Furka Pass going up is not too steep, so that gives me a little bit of heart that perhaps the wind will not be too much of an issue, but I'm about to find out. Just paused at a place called Gletsch, where there's a collection of, well, mainly disused hotels by the looks of it. Clearly not the place that people come to spend their holidays, but quite busy with people in their cars, motorhomes, etc. But in front of me I can see the switchback roads that lead up to the Furka Pass, and that is next on the to-do list. Well, if you can hear me over the wind, I'm about to arrive at the Furka Pass. It's taken me 3.5 hours. I've climbed over 1,000 metres, stopped a few times. Hard work, but thoroughly enjoyable, despite the wind. Oh, and it's a bit nippy as well. Yeah, Furka Pass, 2,436 metres. Done it. Bratwurst mit Brot. Dankeschön. Well, it's not quite what I expected, but it is a bratwurst with bread, slice of something, green pepper and ketchup. Yum. I've just paused for the moment at the well, it's actually now a busy roundabout. I don't remember it being a busy roundabout back in 2010 when I cycled from southern England to southern Italy, because this must be the point whereby I turned to go up to the Gotthard Pass. It's now labelled yeah, no comment. It's now labelled EuroVelo 5. It certainly wasn't labelled EuroVelo 5 back in 2010. Fortunately, there are two roads. There's the new road that presumably that Porsche driver was just zooming off on, and there's the old cobbled track which I took back in 2010, at which point at the top, after having arrived at the Gotthard Pass, I started having issues with my spokes. God, it brings back memories. But I'm going to retrace my steps now slightly to go to the town of Andermatt, where I'm going to stay. Hopefully in the same campsite that I stayed in back in 2010.
I'm Rich, and this is Becca.
Hiya.
And we live in Ilkley in Yorkshire.
Okay, so not too far from me.
No.
And you've just come up the Furka Pass,
We
like
have.
I did yesterday.
We have.
Yeah.
So what did you think of it?
16 kilometres of unrelenting hill. I think the average gradient's 7%, and there are a lot of cars. So I'd say, 2 hours of leg burning pain, but incredible views. The downhill especially was the most impressive bit. Yeah. Constant switchbacks.
And was it tougher than you thought it would be?
I hadn't really researched it in advance, which was probably the right way to do it. Yeah.
It was exactly what I thought it'd be.
Yeah. Have you done any other similar climbs in the past?
I think I came to watch the Tour de France maybe 4 or 5 years ago and went up Finthote Pass near Chamonix.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that was similar, but not as long. Yeah. This was 2 hours, which is quite a long time to go uphill.
Yeah, I suppose the saving grace is the gradient, isn't it? Because you know, we all of us come from West Yorkshire or live in West Yorkshire, where gradient is kind of, they don't really care about it when they're building roads. They just kind of build them to the top of the hill.
No, well, that's because they were unkind to pack horses and let them go up anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, famously, I think Swiss and French engineers tried to make sure that all gradients were below about 7%.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not like it's. There's only one bit that I would say was my legs started to sort of. It definitely got above 7%.
Was that the final bit?
Yeah, it was near the house. You know, the like cafe and the hotel.
Yeah.
That was the only bit that was a bit.
I started doing that in about 100-metre sprints and stopping occasionally.
Well, about halfway up, I had to put a podcast on because I was like, I need something to distract me.
Yeah, well, you could put this one on next time.
Yeah, I will do.
And coming back down, there was an issue with the wind coming back down, wasn't there?
There was a savage wind that was sort of trying to blow you off the edge the entire way down. But other than that, no, it was good. Actually, quite a lot of cars and vans were stopping to let us go past because we were so much quicker around the corners.
And that was also noticeable when you got to the town of Glitch. A lot of the heavy traffic seemed to turn left and go up the pass in the direction of Interlaken.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of that pass was, but yeah, everything seemed to turn off that way, and there was a lot of heavies going up that road, so I'm glad I wasn't going up there.
Yeah, this is the most noisy campsite in the world.
Yeah, we've got some jingling horses going by.
Yeah, and the helicopter will be back in a few seconds. But this is part of a bigger, I think, 3-month journey for you.
Well, we're going from basically Nantes in sort of Midwest France down to Rome.
But it's not a direct route that you're taking.
No, we've been wiggling. So we kind of came all the way down the Atlantic coast, and we went back up to Bordeaux and down the Canal de Midi, and then round up part of the Rhône Valley route, Avignon, Lyon, Geneva, and we had a bit of a break in the Alps to do some hiking, which I don't think was great preparation for the hills, because we'd done about 2 days of, 2,000 metre hiking days, and then we decided to cycle up the Furka Pass.
And bear in mind, this podcast is about the Via Rhôna and the EuroVelo 17. The other bits of the Via Rhôna, what did you think of them?
Well, we didn't do the whole thing. We skipped between Avignon and Lyon, but the bits basically as soon as you come out of Lyon, just the mountains. It's kind of actually quite nice. The mountain just slowly built up, and it was I'd say within a day's cycling we were back to full peak, but from flat. So it was quite impressive.
There's a nice hill just outside of Geneva, which gets you prepared for the Alps as well.
Yeah, 400 metres, isn't it?
Yeah, steady up.
But no, great. I'd say most of it was pretty well segregated. There were only some bits that weren't. Amazing views, sunny, lots of raclette and fondue.
Yeah. And how are you finding Switzerland for the cost of being here?
It's expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive.
The trains especially, here's your helicopter back. It's a lot. I'd say it's like double France, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the rest of your trip.
Thank you. Thanks. You too. Very impressive.
I'll see you back in West Yorkshire.
Yeah, see you there.
So that's it for episode 58, part 7 of my Grand Tour of Europe. And that's the end of the EuroVelo 17, the Via Rhôna, until quite recently. And strangely enough, if you remember, at the very beginning, I said the EuroVelo 17 started at a roundabout down in Sète. Well, I've just found the end of the Via Rhôna EuroVelo 17 here in Andermatt, and would you believe it finishes at a roundabout, and you can hear the traffic behind me. Not the most glamorous of places to finish, but there we go. Spent last night at the campsite here in Andermatt, as I did back in 2010, and the conversation that you just heard there with Rich and Becca, who were sharing tent space with me. They put their tent up next door to mine, got chatting to them this morning, and hopefully it was interesting listening to their experiences of going at the Furka Pass, not mine. So that's it. It's been 12 days from the 11th to the 22nd of August 2022, and It's involved 10 days of cycling, 2 days of non-cycling. I reckon I've cycled around 900 kilometres in total, taken 2 trains, the helicopter's back. Goodness me, this is like Piccadilly Circus, and now the army's going past. I've had everything this morning. 2 trains which have taken me, well, just a little bit under 200 kilometres, which makes, I reckon, a total of around 1,100 kilometres. The official distance is 1,200 kilometres, which is interesting. Don't know where those 100 kilometres went, but there we go. The weather has been an issue for the first time in the entire trip around Europe, both in Lyon and more recently when I arrived at Lac Léman. But the highlight must be, of course, that Furka Pass trail, that Furka Pass climb, which I did yesterday, which was superb. Camped most nights. Thank you to Jean Daniel in Sète. He was my warm showers host and also took that hotel when I got to Lyon. Thanks also to Rob Ainsley for the music, as per usual. If you'd like to contact the podcast, you can do so by going to cyclingeurope.org/contact. And of course, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by going to cyclingeurope.org/support. So that's it for this episode, part 7, episode 58 of the Cycling Europe podcast. Now that the EuroVelo 17 has finished, I need to start my final section of this trip, which is the EuroVelo 15, which is going to take me from Andermatt, hopefully all the way back to Rotterdam for my ferry on the 3rd of September, which means basically I've now got 12 days in which to finish this journey. Will I do it? Find out in episode 59 of the Cycling Europe podcast, which should be with you in the first week of September. Thanks for listening, and I hope where you are it's a lot quieter and a lot more peaceful than it is in Andermatt this morning.